In 1948, a man in Ohio kept 12 hens in a wire coop behind his garage and sold eggs to half his street. That coop paid his property taxes every year. Today we're told the future is a phone app, a drop-shipping store, a course that sells more courses. But here's the twist. Our grandparents built real businesses in the dirt behind their houses, and most quietly out-earned the side hustles sold to you today. Number 14 made more per hour than most people manage online now. And number 3 was so dependable that banks accepted it as collateral. These weren't hustles. They were empires the size of a backyard. Before we start, hit that subscribe button, because what these people knew might change how you think about money. Let's count down, starting with number 20. Number 20, the roadside produce stand. Every August, your grandfather set a wooden table at the end of the driveway and stacked it with tomatoes, sweet corn, and green beans picked that morning while the dew was still on the vine. A hand-lettered sign leaned against a coffee can, and the whole thing ran on the honor system. Corn sold 10 ears for a quarter in 1955, and a good stand could clear more on a Saturday than a factory shift paid in a day. There was no rent, no overhead, no algorithm deciding who saw the sign. Just a table, a road, and food people actually wanted. Neighbors slowed their cars from a block away. Kids manned the can and made change in their heads. What made it work was trust, the kind you cannot buy with a 5-star rating. Today we hand platforms a cut to sell strangers things we never touch. Your grandfather kept every cent, and the only fee he ever paid was a morning in the garden. Number 19, backyard eggs. Half a dozen hens in a coop behind the shed could feed a family and still leave enough to sell. Your grandmother knew each bird by name and by temperament, and she knew that a laying hen cost almost nothing to keep once the vegetable scraps went in the pail instead of the trash. A dozen eggs went for around 60 cents in the late 1950s, and a root of a dozen steady neighbors turned a coop into a paycheck. The eggs were gathered warm, wiped clean, and packed in cartons saved from the week before. Customers came to the back door on their way home from work. There was no shipping, no packaging design, no ad spend, and the product renewed itself every single morning while everyone slept. Compare that to a modern store that sells goods it has never seen, shipped from a warehouse it will never visit. Your grandmother's inventory clucked in the yard and paid for itself in feed. The margin was almost pure profit, and it came with breakfast. Number 18, the worm farm. It sounds like a joke until you learn what a good bed of night crawlers earned near a fishing lake. Your grandfather kept a shaded box of damp soil and coffee grounds under the porch, and the worms did all the work, multiplying quietly in the dark. On a Friday evening in summer, every man heading to the water needed bait, and a cup of a dozen fat crawlers sold for a nickel or a dime with no effort at all. The overhead was a wooden box and some kitchen scraps. There was no season it truly stopped, no supplier to pay, and the livestock reproduced faster than he could sell it. Kids got roped in to count worms into paper cups on the front step. What looks humble was actually a machine that ran on garbage and printed small money on demand. Modern hustlers chase trends that vanish in a month. A worm bed near a lake was a business that lasted decades, and it fertilized the garden on the side. Number 17, taking in washing. Before every home had a machine, a woman with a wringer, a clothesline, and a strong back could run a laundry out of her own kitchen. Your great-grandmother soaked, scrubbed, boiled, and pressed other families' shirts and sheets, charging by the basket or the bundle. It was hard work, hands raw from lye soap and hot water, but a steady set of customers meant steady cash in an era when a married woman had few other ways to earn. The clothes came back folded and smelling of sunshine, ironed so sharp the collars could cut. Neighbors trusted her because she lived down the street, not behind a screen. In many households, that laundry money was the difference between making rent and losing the house. Today we call this a service startup and slap an app on it. She called it Tuesday. And unlike a gig platform that takes its cut and sets your price, She owned her rates, her hours, and every dollar that came through the door. Number 16, the knife and tool sharpener. Your grandfather kept a foot-powered grinding wheel in the garage, and word got around that he could put an edge on anything. Dull kitchen knives, garden shears, lawnmower blades, the butcher's cleaver. All of it came to him. He charged a dime, a blade, a quarter for the big stuff, and on a Saturday, a line of neighbors would drift through the yard with paper sacks of dull steel. The wheel threw a fan of orange sparks, and the smell of hot metal hung in the air. It was a skill, not a gadget, and skills do not go out of style the way apps do. Every household on earth owned knives, and every knife went dull. That is a customer base that renews itself forever. Some men ran a full mobile route, a wheel bolted to a bicycle, ringing a bell down the street. No subscription, no upsell, just a service people needed, and a craft that took years to master. The barrier to entry was the whole point. Number 15, firewood. On a wooded lot, a chainsaw and a strong afternoon turned fallen trees into winter income. Your grandfather cut, split, and stacked cordwood through the fall, and by the first cold snap, every neighbor with a stove or a fireplace came calling. A cord sold for a few dollars in the 50s, more if he delivered and stacked it, and a man could work through a whole woodlot one weekend at a time. The work was honest and brutal, the smell of sawdust and two-stroke oil clinging to his clothes. But demand was as certain as the season. Cold always came. People always needed to stay warm. There was no marketing, no funnel, no chasing an audience, because the customers found you the minute the temperature dropped. Split wood does not care about trends or platforms. It sits in the yard, dry and ready, and turns into cash the moment frost hits the window. Try finding an online hustle with demand that reliable and overhead that low. Number 14, sewing and alterations. A woman with a good machine and a sharp eye could dress half a town from her front room. Your grandmother hemmed pants, took in jackets, let out waistbands, and stitched wedding dresses that neighbors remembered for 50 years. In an age when clothes were mended, not thrown away, a seamstress never wanted for work, and the good ones charged what they were worth. Here's the wild part. Do the math on a skilled dressmaker's hours in the 1950s, and she often cleared more per hour than plenty of people scraping by on content and clicks today. The work came to her, chalk lines and straight pins, the machine humming late into the evening while the radio played. A ripped seam is a customer. A growing child is a customer. A daughter's wedding is a whole season of work. She built a business on a skill nobody could outsource, undercut, or automate away. The barrier to entry was a decade of practice, which is exactly why the money was good. Number 13, rabbits. In the backyard hutch, a few breeding does could feed a family and turn a profit on the side. Your grandfather raised rabbits for meat, and the arithmetic was almost unfair. A single doe could produce dozens of offspring in a year. They ate cheap greens and pellets, and they were ready to sell in a matter of weeks. Dressed rabbit fetched a good price at the meat counter, and the pelts went to a furrier for extra. The whole operation lived in a row of wire cages behind the garage and cost almost nothing to run once it was going. This was livestock that multiplied faster than any spreadsheet projection and online course ever promised. And it was real, tangible, and edible. There was no app to update, no trend to chase, no audience to please, just animals that turned kitchen scraps and yard clippings into food and money on a schedule you could set your watch by. Our grandparents understood something we forgot. The best business feeds you even when it isn't paying you. Number 12, the home bakery. Your grandmother's kitchen turned flour and sugar into a reputation, and the reputation turned into orders. Bread, pies, dinner rolls, birthday cakes, all of it baked in the same oven that fed her own family. Word spread church pew by church pew, and soon she was baking for weddings, funerals, and every holiday on the calendar. A pie that cost her pennies in ingredients sold for real money because nobody could match the crust. The whole house smelled like cinnamon and yeast by 9 in the morning. And the money went straight into the cookie jar on top of the refrigerator. She had no storefront, no permits, no branding consultant, just an oven and a name people trusted. Modern bakers rent commercial kitchens and pay for delivery apps that eat their profit. She walked her pies next door. The overhead was a bag of flour, and the marketing was the smell drifting out the kitchen window. Try to compete with that. Number 11. Canning and preserves. When the garden came in all at once, your grandmother turned the surplus into money that lasted all winter. Jars of tomatoes, green beans, peaches, strawberry jam, bread and butter pickles, and watermelon rind relish lined the cellar shelves like a bank vault. What the family didn't eat, she sold. A jar of good jam or a quart of pickles moved fast at the church bazaar and even faster among neighbors who never learned to do it themselves. The ingredients were nearly free, grown in the backyard, and the only real cost was the sugar and the lids. Here's what made it genius. She was preserving both food and profit, storing summer's abundance to sell it in the dead of February when nobody else had anything fresh. That is inventory management our grandparents did by instinct. No warehouse, no cold storage bill, just a cool cellar and a summer's worth of work. An online hustle evaporates the day the platform changes its rules. Those jars sat on the shelf, holding their value, ready to sell whenever cash was needed. Number 10. Beekeeping. A few hives at the back of the property produced something people will always pay for, and the bees did nearly all the labor. Your grandfather tended his hives in a veil and gloves, and every fall he pulled frames heavy with honey that sold as fast as he could jar it. A hive cost little to start and less to maintain, and once it was established, it produced year after year with only a few hours of attention. Local honey moved at a premium because everyone believed it helped their allergies, and the beeswax sold on top of that for candles and polish. The bees pollinated the whole neighborhood's gardens for free as a bonus. This was passive income before the phrase existed, a workforce of thousands that asked for nothing but a dry box and a little shade. Compare that to a digital side hustle that demands constant feeding and dies the moment you stop. A hive keeps working whether you show up or not, and it hands you liquid gold every single autumn. Number 9. Small engine repair. When the lawnmower wouldn't start, the whole street came to your grandfather's garage. He kept a workbench, a coffee can of parts, and the patience to figure out anything with a pull cord. Mowers, tillers, chainsaws, outboard motors, snowblowers, all of it landed on his bench, and he charged a fair rate that people gladly paid because the alternative was buying new. The work was steady because machines break, and they always will. A grease-stained apron and a set of wrenches were the entire startup cost. Word of mouth kept him booked through every mowing season. Here's the thing about a repair business built on skill. It cannot be automated away, undercut by a warehouse, or replaced by a slicker website, because the mower still has to be physically fixed by hands that know what they're doing. He built a moat around his income the old-fashioned way, by being the one person on the block who could actually solve the problem. That is worth more than any follower count. Number 8. The home barber. Your grandfather set a chair on the back porch, hung a mirror on a nail, and cut hair for a quarter. Men came after work and on Saturday mornings, and while he clipped and trimmed, the porch became the neighborhood news desk, every rumor and ball game and complaint passing through. A haircut cost him nothing but time and a comb, and the money went in his shirt pocket, tax and trouble-free. He never advertised. He never needed to. Hair grows on every head in America, forever, which makes it about the most recession-proof product ever invented. This was a business with zero inventory, zero shipping, and a customer base that came back every 3 weeks like clockwork, whether the economy boomed or busted. Modern hustlers dream about recurring revenue and subscription models. Your grandfather had it figured out with a chair and a pair of scissors. The overhead was a bottle of hair tonic, and the retention rate was 100%, because hair does not stop growing for anyone. Number 7. Furniture refinishing and chair caning. Your grandfather could take a beaten-up dresser off the curb and turn it into money. He stripped the old finish, sanded it smooth, stained it deep, and sold it for many times what it cost him, which was often nothing at all. The chair caners did the same trick, reweaving the seats of worn-out chairs that would otherwise have gone to the dump. The garage smelled of turpentine and fresh varnish, and a piece that looked like junk on Monday looked like an heirloom by Friday. This was value created out of thin air and skill, buying low from people who saw trash and selling high to people who saw treasure. That is arbitrage our grandparents did with their hands. No supplier, no shipping container, no minimum order, just an eye for good bones and the craft to bring them back. Online resellers chase the same idea today, but they never touch the product and never add a thing to it. He added everything, and he kept the whole markup. Number 6. Watch and clock repair. On a workbench under a bright lamp, your grandfather opened the backs of watches and coaxed tiny gears back to life with tweezers and a jeweler's loop screwed into one eye. Every household owned clocks and watches, and every one of them eventually stopped, which meant a steady stream of customers with something precious they could not fix themselves. The work was delicate and quiet, springs and jewels laid out on a felt cloth, and he charged well because almost no one else could do it. A pocket watch was often a man's most valuable possession, so people paid gladly and trusted him completely. Here's what made it bulletproof. The higher the skill, the smaller the competition, and repairing a mechanical movement took years to learn. He wasn't selling a product anyone could copy. He was selling knowledge locked in his own two hands. That's the opposite of a saturated online market where everyone sells the same drop-shipped gadget. His barrier to entry was his moat, and it kept the money coming. Number 5. Radio and TV repair. When the picture went to snow in the middle of a ball game, the whole family panicked, and your grandfather got the call. He kept a stock of vacuum tubes in the garage and knew how to read a schematic. And in an age when a television cost a month's wages, nobody threw one out. They fixed it. He'd haul the heavy set onto his bench, test the tubes one by one, swap the dead ones, and have the picture back by supper. House calls paid even better, and he'd drive across town with a case of tubes rattling in the trunk. The work required real training, which is exactly why it paid so well, and why he had so little competition. This was cutting-edge technology of its day, and the man who could fix it was indispensable. Think about that. He built a thriving business on the newest technology in the country, using nothing but knowledge and a soldering iron in his own garage. The modern equivalent isn't a drop-shipping store. It's the rare person who actually understands how the machine works. Number 4. The Christmas tree lot. For 6 weeks a year, an empty corner of the yard or a rented lot on Main Street turned into pure profit. Your grandfather either grew the trees on a back acre or bought them wholesale by the truckload, and from Thanksgiving to Christmas Eve, he sold them to every family in town for a few dollars apiece. A tree that cost him next to nothing to grow or a couple of dollars to buy sold for several times that, and the demand was as certain as the calendar. The lot smelled of pine and wood smoke from the burn barrel, and kids dragged their parents down the rows looking for the perfect one. Here's the beauty of it. The whole business happened in one short, intense burst, then closed until next year, leaving him free the other 10 months. If he grew his own, the trees appreciated in the ground while he did nothing, gaining value every single season. That is a crop that plants itself into a Christmas paycheck. No algorithm required, no audience to maintain. Number 3. The garage mechanic. When a car wouldn't turn over, the whole neighborhood knew whose driveway to push it to. Your grandfather worked on engines in his own garage, nights and weekends, and there was almost nothing he couldn't diagnose by ear. Brakes, carburetors, transmissions, a rattle nobody else could find. He charged half what the dealership did and did better work. Cars were the second most expensive thing a family owned, and keeping one running was worth serious money to people who could not afford to buy new. He was so trusted and so reliable that his word was as good as a bank's. In fact, his steady side income was solid enough that lenders treated it like real collateral. Think about that. A business run out of a home garage, backed by nothing but skill and reputation, was considered as dependable as a paycheck. There was no platform taking a cut, no rating to manage, just a man, a set of tools, and a line of customers who trusted him with their most important machine. Skill built that trust, and trust built the business. Number 2, the neighborhood photographer. Before every phone had a camera, the person who owned a good one and knew how to use it owned a small monopoly. Your grandfather or grandmother shot weddings, baby portraits, graduations, and family Christmas cards, then developed the film in a dark room rigged up in the basement or the bathroom. The red safe light glowed, the chemicals had their sharp smell, and images slowly appeared in the developing tray like magic. A single wedding paid handsomely, and the prince paid again, because families ordered copies for years. This was a business built on capturing moments that could never be repeated, which meant customers paid whatever it took to get them right. The equipment was an investment, and the skill took real study, and that combination kept the competition thin and the prices healthy. Today, everyone has a camera in their pocket, and the market is drowning in it. Back then, the person who could actually produce a beautiful, lasting portrait was rare, respected, and paid accordingly. Scarcity plus skill equaled a business no app could flatten. Number 1, the boarding house. This was the original everything, and it crowned the backyard economy. Your great-grandmother took in boarders, renting out the spare rooms and feeding everyone 3 meals a day at a long table, and in doing so she ran a hotel, a restaurant, and a cleaning service all out of a single house. Working men far from home, new arrivals, young clerks and traveling salesmen all needed a room and a good meal, and she provided both for a weekly rate that added up fast across 4 or 5 boarders. The kitchen ran from dawn until after dark, the smell of roast and fresh bread filling every hall. Sheets washed and pressed, floors swept, the whole operation a marvel of logistics run entirely by one woman with a ledger in her apron pocket. For countless families, especially those led by widows, the boarding house was the entire livelihood, and it built savings, sent children to school, and kept the house in the family's name. We reinvented every piece of this recently and called it revolutionary. The room rental, the meal service, the app for the spare bedroom. She did all of it a century ago with a stove, a spare room, and an iron will. And she kept every dollar because there was no platform standing between her and the people at her table. There they are, 20 businesses our grandparents ran out of their backyards, kitchens, and garages, and not one of them needed a phone, a platform, or a stranger taking a cut. What they had was better, real skills, real products, and customers who lived down the street and paid in cash. So here's my challenge. Pick one: the eggs, the honey, the sharpening wheel, the repair bench. Then ask yourself why we ever traded all of that for a hustle that lives or dies by someone else's algorithm. Our grandparents built wealth you could hold in your hands. Maybe they knew something we're only now starting to remember. Tell me in the comments which one you'd bring back.